So, Burr-Feinstein, the good news is it met a quick and swift and complete death in the Senate. Reuters had some great coverage and uncovered some little tidbits that I don't think we would have known about otherwise. The way they expressed it was they said after a rampage that, talking about the San Bernardino rampage, the rampage that left 14 people dead in San Bernardino, key U.S. lawmakers pledged to seek a law requiring technology companies to give law enforcement agencies a, quote, backdoor, whatever that means. And we've talked about how ill-defined important terms are, unfortunately. But, so for whatever that means, to encrypted communications and electronic devices, such as the iPhone used by one of the shooters. Now, they wrote, only months later, much of the support is gone, and the push for legislation dead, according to sources in congressional offices, the administration, and the tech sector. Draft legislation that Senators Richard Burr and Dianne Feinstein, the Republican and Democratic leaders of the Intelligence Committee, had circulated weeks ago, likely will not be introduced this year, and, even if it were, would stand no chance of advancing, these sources said. So the other little tidbits that I pulled out of a much longer coverage was that the short life of the push for legislation illustrates the intractable nature of the debate over digital surveillance and encryption, which has been raging in one form or another since the 1990s. What I didn't know was that the CIA and NSA were ambivalent, meaning, okay, but we know that the FBI wasn't. But the CIA and NSA were, according to several current and former intelligence officials, wrote Reuters, in part because officials in those agencies feared any new law would interfere with their own encryption efforts. So they wanted things to sort of be left alone. They were like, we have to be very careful with what we do here if we implement any new legislation. And Reuters also wrote that half a dozen people familiar with the White House deliberations said they were hamstrung by a long-standing split within the Obama administration, which pitted Comey and the DOJ against technology advisors and other agencies, including the Commerce and State Departments. And then finally, they said there was reluctance to take on the tech industry in an election year, which I thought was interesting. So, yes, the tech industry does have power, and this really does sound like the huge reaction that occurred in the tech sector, which was very vocal among both professional cryptographers, and everything that we covered, the EFF and the all of the letters, signed by the who's who of technology and cryptography, really did serve to put the brakes on this. And if nothing else, it's like, well, we can't deal with that now. So, it died just completely and totally, which is really a good sign. It's like not alive in any form any longer. So, yay.
The greatest virtue, really, in our system of government is that it moves incredibly slowly.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And just really impossible to get anything done.
I'm often glad now that I'm 61, because, they won't be able to screw it up that badly.
You're safe for the next 40 years.
I figure in the time I have left. Yeah. And it does move slowly. Yeah. So,
so any big change like that, I'm really curious. I bet you it is. I think you're right that it's probably the lobbying of the tech industry that had the most impact on this.
The feeling I got from reading Reuters coverage was that there was enough I don't want to use the word FUD, because that's famously, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But arguably, the politicians don't understand the technology. And so the technologists said, this is impossible. What you want is impossible. And I would argue, and everyone has heard me argue, that's not true. But it turned out to be great that that's what got said, because the politicians who don't know one way or the other said, oh, maybe it is. I mean, but, the smart people are saying we can't do this, even though we don't know why. So maybe we shouldn't.